I'm an asshole when I wanna be, just don't wanna be a poser. My philosophy is just reality, I'm sober, but you still be looking up to me cause I've been high ever since I came.
Hi, my name's John. I am from Only Posers Don't Listen to Podcasts. I am here with Max of Ultra Deluxe.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
Anytime. So you just released an album. Really,
Yeah.
really good stuff.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Yeah, it just came out on the 23rd of April. It's called A Call to Arms. It's kind of like this space saga type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty. I mean, people use the concept album concept loosely, like, oh yeah, it's all a theme, but this could be turned into a play very easily. It reads as a script with characters, and
yeah, no, that would be like an ideal, like far-reaching goal, but all the lyrics are just dialogue, so it would be awesome if I was able to like do a play, especially like with puppets, just to make it like really goofy.
I like the concept.
I feel like there's no sci-fi puppet, like that's not a thing that I know that
Closest I got is like Thumb Wars. Like, you're right. That is a good idea. So just before we dive, my plan is to go track by track. I just find this a really good release. I grew up on industrial music and really, chiptune, very, very, that kind of stuff has been, and at the forefront of the underground in the past 10 years. But I think you do a really good combination of that with punk, with a lot of other symphonic elements. So before we get to the music, you write all of it?
Yeah, I write it all.
And you have Emily on bass and Dane on guitar, a little bass, and it was recorded in Cherry Hill by Doug Gallo at AGL Sounds, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you've kind of been with the set of characters and this aforementioned concept for a couple of years now. You have it goes through 4 main characters. You had a previous album, right, with another character who worked for the corporation or the UGF.
Yeah, so the UGF was kind of like a big dystopian overarching, like kind of like military government capitalist organization that kind of controls everything. And so the main character of the first album, Adrian, kind of is a person that's really down on their luck, doesn't really know what to do because of how life is like. So they end up joining the UGF to pilot this ship that's going to colonize another planet. And so that was like the first album that came out, called Contact, in 2018. And then this year, well, 2020, I introduced 4 new characters. Yusef, Arya, and Eula, who are sisters, and Rory, who's been talked about in other releases, but Rory's kind of like the leader, or like the Han Solo, I guess, of like this rebel group. And they are like the main characters of the new album that just came out.
It's definitely it's good to. I think it raised a lot of realistic questions about political organizing, and obviously this is a sci-fi concept album, but I think the characters really personify a lot of internal dilemmas. You have Arya, who's like kind of the unifier, but has a very general, like can bring people together. But then you have Yusef, the organizer, who also is kind of like an anxiety imposter syndrome, like, am I really the right person to be leading this? And then Eula, who's just pure kind of existential crisis. And as the album goes on, there's a logical basis for that, definitely. But I think we all have that feeling, like, are we doing enough to change the world for the better?
Yeah, no, that's really cool that you basically nailed it. Like Eula is on the younger side, so she's the younger sister of Arya. She's like about 23 years old, and really wants to make a difference, but also this kind of was pretty subtle, but she comes down with lung cancer, and so she volunteers to hijack the ship because she, doesn't have health insurance and, believes in the revolution. So kind of as a martyr to the cause, she's saying, I'm gonna die anyway. So that's kind of where she gets really existential towards the end of the album, in Collision.
So it starts with a January 2753, which at this point it feels utopian to think that humanity still exists in 730 years, but
yeah. So that song is kind of like I don't know. I imagined that as like, Rory is kind of giving this big rousing speech, and kind of explaining. I kind of go into that, but that, this government is, planning terrorist attacks and blaming it on alien planets and blaming it on people that didn't actually do it, and to justify invasions is, very common theme in America as well.
Bomb their own people to justify the endless torment of the universe's resources. It's very I mean, as we can say about America, which we know and hate, it's our whole economic system is propped up on war and the military industrial complex. So
yeah,
I think that's pertinent, and that's really the basis for everything, for all of our imperialist policies, and it's good starting point. And then you get to Commune, who area begins talking about the planet Exevium.
Xevium, yeah. I just kind of made that up when I was like,
But it sounds like this, this idealistic, there's indigenous peoples. It hasn't been annihilated by the UGF and plummeted for resources.
Yeah, and very peaceful, like very ecologically sound, like very intelligent group of indigenous like aliens living there, that have maintained neutrality, and kind of have been really prosperous because of their natural resources, but they're just on such a far-reaching part of the universe that they haven't had any issues yet, but as the UGF runs out of resources, they have to go there.
Absolutely. But it's a good, Arya, I think she's a good overarching view. She talks about the kind of like the ecological impacts of the imperialism, and then the character of Yusef brings it back, says like every brick they claim was ours. The Arya, it's kind of a back and forth.
Yeah,
and she gets more focused with like the pointlessness of consumerism.
Yeah, and that I always like that. Song is meant to be like, I really liked the anime Samurai Champloo growing up. My favorite episodes of that anime were actually the ones where they weren't doing anything. They would just like arrive at a new town and like be discussing their plans for like what to do next. And so I always viewed that song as like they're around the commune or around like the outskirts of the city, and they're just talking about political goings on, and that one's just a conversation.
Yeah, but I really like the line, "Who made the thrones for the king to sit?" Because it all comes back to labor and how we're being exploited, just like those, the natives of Xevium. We are all, being annihilated by the system.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah, I just it's just everybody. There would be no empire, there would be no imperialism, there would be no military or any corporation without the workers. Yeah.
So target acquired is kind of another one that's more of a higher concept. I feel, for my perception, I don't know, this might even be helpful to you. It's kind of you've a contrast. You have the empowered scintillating verses, where they kind of begin the plan, take the fate of the ship's trajectory and crash it into the sea. And then the chorus of "When I was young, I watched the world die, it fell from the sky." So it really highlights kind of like the revolutionary's dilemma, but between perpetuating the violence, but as we all know, state violence is infinitely more powerful and evil than any that can be perpetrated by an individual.
Yeah, and that that chorus is very much like everybody arrived at some sort of leftist ideology or anything from different reasons, whether they, experienced traumatic events, or whether they, had, read a lot, or whether they, um, just anything. And so I think at this point in history, in this story, well, at this point in the future, a lot of people are tired of seeing, this just this tyrannical state bringing down death. And so they have to respond, violently, but for a cause.
And I think a good concept throughout the album is, you have Arya and Rory kind of unifying people, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the actions of the individual. And I think it's you have many more complex moral quandaries when you're, making decisions, doing the action, as opposed to being in a big group and, partaking in it together.
Yeah, and that's something that it's really easy just today with this hellscape we live in to get bogged down of what can I do, or I can't do enough. And there's a difference between saying oh, if you don't recycle, you're a bad and it's more I think that, if everybody, or if at least everybody, they don't have to do an action to make a difference, but if everybody believed in a certain cause, or if one more person believes in it, then that's just adding up. And I think that the individual does have a lot of power, especially with what you promote, or what things you promote, and what
just the resources you share.
And also that kind of goes more to mutual aid, which I think, that is obviously community driven, but you need people individually to do that. So I think that's where the individual has a lot of power.
Absolutely. It's kind of, I think it's about coming together and, empowering each other as a community. So you're throwing meteors, which is, Rory again takes the forefront, relaying the need for unification with the epic strings and the choir. It's really comes together really nice, really cinematic. And a line from that I really like is, they took us for sheep, so we view them as pigs. In the beginning, it's a good one.
Yeah, that's definitely a cop hating song. I wanted that one to be very, very angry. I also really like Rage Against the Machine.
It's
so yeah, I tried to channel them a little bit with that song.
That's definitely, they had a cover album. They covered MC5 and Minor Threat, and that's how I personally got into punk as a kid.
Yeah. Oh man, that and yeah, that whole album, Renegades, and that always makes me think of wasn't there a Minor Threat cover of 12XU by Wire? I always thought it would be cool if Rage Against the Machine covered Minor Threat covering Wire.
Cover of a cover. I don't know why, it's not a more accepted thing.
Yeah.
I just like the concept, because then at that point it's a folk song, and
yeah,
the meaning is greater than the original. So after Throwing Meteors is Pillow Talk. I'd say that's my favorite song. Definitely instrumentally. So it starts with a conversation. Feel free to correct me on any of this. This is, perception from reading lyrics. Starts with a conversation between Rory and Eula, backed by beautifully complex synth line, builds with glitching in the synths, and then the drums kind of showing a crack in the beauty, which is reality, and it's really summed up by, I don't know, this is one of the, I'm gonna butcher it, but one of the most beautiful lines of prose I've read in a minute. Without life there is no love, and if there's no love, what's the fucking point of all this forsaken pain?
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah, thank you so much for really, that was a really cool description. Yeah, so this is kind of a more soap opera-y element to it, but Rory is a bit older and a bit more power hungry, and they actually end up having a romantic relationship. And so he kind of convinces her, he's not the greatest partner, but he kind of convinces her, he cares more about the revolution than her well-being, but that she's sick, that Eula's sick. He kind of convinces her to, do the action, and kind of explaining that, you need to do this for everyone, and for me, and for everyone. So yeah, that there's a weird kind of soap opera love triangle thing going on there, where Rory is the ex-boyfriend of Adrian. They split up a long time before, but and Adrian, obviously because of political differences, Adrian kind of is more of a centrist, and so Rory is kind of a little bit abusing power there. I don't know, I just kind of
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
to it.
the internal layers. I like this. This is good stuff because you have UGF, and I don't know. I mean, ACAB, all cop. But okay, I work in healthcare, and you have patients who, can't afford X treatment, and you try to justify it by yourself, and you've. I think that's kind of it. You have people who partake in some of the fringes of society that really affects the poor and more marginalized groups, and you're constantly trying to justify it for yourself, but you have an inherent sense of guilt, and I think that can be exploited. That's exploited by capitalism itself, in which they say you're a hero, keep going, but
Yeah,
tangents.
and that kind of goes into, I kind of picking up what you're saying, where Adrian is kind of living in this dystopia where they don't really have a choice. They're down on their luck. They can't find a job. They don't really join the military because they love imperialism, but there's not a lot else to do. And a lot of times, I don't know, nobody, a lot of people don't pick their job, or a lot of people don't get the privilege to pick their job. And, everybody's got to make a living and make money. So it kind of just comes down to that sometimes.
And it's I mean, so pillow talk, as we described, it's as you described, it's trying to convince Eula to take this action, and I think it works really well with the music, where you have the reverb on the snare at the end, and it's like the reverberating effects of the actions, and then it cuts out to just straight up distorted bass, which is kind of it's like the first step. It's the yes, I will do this.
Yeah, thanks so much.
And that goes to Careless, which I'm glad you elucidated. Eula has the lung cancer, so it provides more hints to the lyrics, but it's taking this, like we said, the community and the action and all of us empowering each other. It doesn't happen without individual action, and I think it's a really good internal monologue kind of setting.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd say this is where the album gets very depressing.
It definitely touches on some aspects of I'll butcher the name, but Fall of Ephira, some symphonic crust type influence.
Oh yeah, I was looking at stuff like that today on the internet. I gotta look at some more bands like that, because that's a whole subgenre, right?
Yeah, it's really, so you have Blackened Crust, which is for some reason big in Canada, where it is, has a lot of black metal themes, but you have some crust bands that incorporate strings, and I think this album does a really good job of it's pretty string heavy for for punk adjacent music, and I think it does a really good job of incorporating it and using it
Yeah,
to push
I
the narrative.
really I don't listen to as much now, but in high school I was really into a lot of post-rock bands, and I really liked just, I don't know, the layer. It's just a really emotional sounding set of instruments, and I think it really conveys a certain mood.
Definitely. I mean, you grow up on movie soundtracks. I don't know if that's what the association with it is. I'm hoping it's not hundreds of years of instilled classical music and shitty European DNA.
Yeah.
Let's just hope it's a bunch of shitty Disney soundtracks instead.
Yeah.
And then the album accumulates in Collision, which is really really emotionally powerful. You know, it begins with the soaring soft synths of fear. I feel, you know, it's got that treble heavy. You get the fear of the inevitable and the hesitance, but then goes on to, you know, there's nothing left, so why not sacrifice, and gets focused with the bass heavy, almost prog type instrumental break. Then the strings go on, and you know, the character of Eula submits to the choice of death and this, you know, perpetual glitchiness.
Yeah, it's just like I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever be able to write a song heavier than that. I just wanted it to like be not that like I mean I could like go to drop C and just like figure something out, but in terms of like lyrically, I don't know, somebody just like walking themselves through their brain as they're dying. Like I don't know. And as they're like doing it to themselves, I don't know how else I could add that. Yeah. But I don't know. I just wanted it to get really loud.
It is a, you know, an extreme example of the realities of, you know, revolutionary action. And
Yeah.
like I said, you know, community organizing is the basis for everything, but if we just sit and talk, nothing really happens.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So yeah, those I really appreciate you letting me do that track by track analysis, Max. It was really
That was
it was
honestly one of the
fantastic.
coolest things that like I've never I mean you just really nailed like a lot of the things that I was going for and brought up things that I didn't even realize. So that was really cool, like seeing another perspective.
I mean, it's you know, I think that's the beauty of having this, you know, sci-fi set in the future thing. You can really, for some reason, get into the niche of reality of, you know, of being a person in politics in the modern day without, you know, bringing up a bunch of modern situations. You know, it's not like it's like a album about Bernie Sanders. It's about,
Yeah.
you know, 75 years in the future.
Yeah, and it's I don't know, I just like, you know, making completely different people that have no bearing on anybody I know. You know,
Mm.
like um I I mean most of the characters are either based off of like some situation I was going through personally or just like some character from some other sci-fi that I like, you know, consumed at one point in my youth.
It's definitely any sci-fi movies you suggest,
Um
or
okay,
books, any
yeah, so
anime?
Metropolis,
Mm.
but the anime version, I have it on DVD. Let me look up the director. But that is like it came out in 2001 and it's okay. Oh, okay, Otomo and Rintaro. That is a really good anime. Really, it that kind of looks like visually that looks like what I imagine the story of mine would look like, just like the cityscape.
Mm.
Um, and then sci-fi books, I don't read as much sci-fi as I do like comic books. I
Mm.
really like novels, but I like more like surreal or like magical realism. But I'd say some sci-fi comic books that I really like is Sparks by Ren McDonald. That's a really good one. And then Peow Press, Peow, they have this whole like like compilation of it's like I guess it's like on a compilation CD you'd have like different songs by different artists. Like this is just like short stories but by different comic artists. And they have it's all like future punk themed. And Freddie Braskow or Fred Bread is another pretty good comic book artist that does a lot of future punk stuff.
It's a really cool cool reading list.
Yeah, I
To put together.
that whole press PO Studios, PEOW, they're running out of Seattle, I think, and it's mostly like weird sci-fi stuff and really cool artists.
Totally. So did you get a chance to play any of this before we shut down, or
yeah,
live?
so this album, the thing about it is I actually wrote most of it in like 2018 and 2019, and
Totally.
it just released now because COVID finally gave me a time to like stop playing shows
Yeah,
and record. So I would say like half the album I've played live before. And like Throwing Meteors and Collision, have been part of our live set, obviously pre-COVID, but for at least a year or two. And so the thing is, before COVID, we were very much a touring band and a live band before studio stuff. And now we have COVID. So we were like, okay, we have I have all these unwritten songs. So let's just record them. And it's a different experience because it's, very, I'm learning how to like play more instruments better, I would say.
I definitely feel that. As did you start with drums?
Yeah, I did start with
Yeah,
drums.
same. So it's kind of like, once you know scales, it's like, oh, I can play most things all right, but then you really lock yourself in the room and it's like, yeah, this could be better. I really, if I focus enough, I can get the chops up, and that's it.
Yeah, and so that's like kind of what I'm trying to do more, I mean, who knows what shows will look like in the fall or if it'll be safe, but I mean, definitely recording music, and that is kind of just, I don't know. I've got a lot of weird places where the story could go, so I might as well try to get it out.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's pretty open-ended, at this point, what is the effect
Yeah.
of this? Anything else you want to plug? Any other bands you want to shout out, or plans for the future? Anything else?
Yeah, so there's some bands that I really like and I think everybody should be looking out for is uh Foxtails. They are a screamo scrams band from Connecticut. They just recently added a violin player, so like their new album is probably coming out later this year or early next year or something. But they're good friends of mine, and our music is not that similar, but a little similar in terms of orchestration and things like that. My friend Radcliffe, Rad X Bent, another Jersey
Rad
artist.
band.
Yeah.
He's got a homie on the feature.
Yeah, I just think also his output is just like there's like a new EP like every other day or
Constant
something. Like,
content, and it's
yeah.
that's some serious production. Like,
Yeah. But his album that came out like in February this year is one of my favorite albums of the year. And yeah. Um, and also Emily from my band is in another band.
Dump Weed.
Dump Weed, yeah.
Dump
I have
Weed.
to plug Dump Weed. They sound like, because I know Dump Weed's like a Blink-182 song, I think. So you'd think that they're like a pop punk band, but they are like a very heavy. They're kind of like they're more like a, I guess like hardcore band, but with some scrams elements.
Totally.
Yeah, and their new stuff is like vampire themed, which you gotta love.
Absolutely. You're right. It is a little more emotionally complex than your average hardcore, but there's definitely a hardcore basis. Yeah. Thank you so much, Max.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was really awesome. It was great talking to you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Yeah, you too.